So let's start with this new recording, and we are going to start from point number 31. So in the Constituent Assembly, Jawaharlal held the Union Powers Committee. So Union Power Committee was held by Jawaharlal, States and Constitution Committee as well. So Jawaharlal Nehru altogether held three committees: States Committee, Constitution Committee, and the Union Power Committee. The members of the Constituent Assembly were elected by the provincial assemblies. The members of the Constituent Assembly were elected by the provincial assemblies through single, transferable, and proportional representation. Members of the Constituent Assembly were elected by the provincial assemblies by the members of the provincial assemblies through single, transferable, and proportional representation. Total membership of the Constituent Assembly was 389, of which 292 were the representatives of the states, and 93 were the representative of the princely states, and 4 were representative of the chief commissioner provinces. Congress won 208 seats, while Muslim League won 73 seats. So इतना आपको पता होना चाहिए. Jinnah was not a member of the Constituent Assembly. Sachidanand Sinha was the first temporary president of the Constituent Assembly on 9th of December 1946. Later, on 11th December 1946, Rajendra Prasad was unanimously elected as the president, who also became the first president of Free India. Constitution was adopted on 26th November 1949. So that is all you should remember here. And there are a lot of facts. There are a lot of facts in this paragraph, so I'm going to read that again. Union Committee was held by Jawaharlal Nehru. States Committee was held by Jawaharlal Nehru. Constitution Committee was also held by Jawaharlal Nehru. The members of the Constituent Assembly were elected by the members of the provincial assemblies through single, transferable, and proportional representation. Total membership of the Constituent Assembly was 389 members, out of which 292 were the representatives of the provinces, 93 were the representatives of the princely states, and 4 members were the representatives of the chief commissioner provinces. Congress altogether won 208 seats, while Muslim League won 73 seats. Jinnah was not a member of the Constituent Assembly. Sachidanand Sinha was the first temporary president of the Constituent Assembly on 9th of December 1946. Later, on 11th December 1946, Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president, who also became the first president of Free India. Constitution of India was finally adopted on 26th of November 1949. Now, Mavlankar was the first speaker of Lok Sabha of Free India. I already know that. First speaker of the Lok Sabha. After accepting the Waivel Plan, interim government was formed under leadership of Nehru on 2nd of September 1946. You should remember this date because this is the day on which the interim government was formed under the leadership of Nehru, and Waivel Plan was actually accepted. So only after accepting the Waivel Plan, interim government was formed under the leadership of Nehru on 2nd of September 1946. Rajendra Prasad held food and agricultural. Now, this is the interim government, and we are talking about portfolios and not the committees. These were the committees that we read about in the previous paragraph, but there is a difference between committees and the departments. So now we are talking about the departments. So the Food and Agricultural Department was put under Rajendra Prasad, and Defense was put under Baldev Singh, and Commonwealth Relations department was headed by Nehru, and Railway was put under Asaf Ali, and Finance was put under Liaquat Ali, and B.R. Ambedkar was not holding any portfolio in the interim government. That's very surprising. Direct Action Day is 16th of August 1946. The worst hit area during Direct Action Day violent activities was Noakhali in Bengal. That is in that point. Then moving on, 1945 to 51, Labour Party. This after the Second World War got over in I think 2nd of September 1945. New government came in England under Clement Attlee. Now this person was from the Labour Party. When India got independence, he decided that the British government would transfer power earlier than June 3rd, 1948. So earlier than June the 3rd, 1948, George VI was the monarch during the time India got independence. George VI. Now George VI was the person who was the king or the monarch of England while India got independence, and the Prime Minister was Clement Attlee. And earlier, it was decided to give independence sooner than 3rd of June 1948. But then Mountbatten came on 24th of March 1947. So that's when he came to India with specific instructions to make India remain united as far as possible. Later, he realized that united India was not achievable and resorted to the partition of India, according to the Mountbatten Plan. So this Mountbatten Plan was released on June the 3rd, 1947. Now you can analyze the chronology here, that Mountbatten came to India on 24th of March 1947, and June he released his Mountbatten Plan, which was nothing but the partition of the country. How the partition was about to be brought? So Legislative Assembly of Bengal and Punjab would meet in two groups, so Hindus and Muslims, to vote for partition. If a simple majority achieved by either group went with partition, then these provinces would be partitioned. Now, Legislative Assembly of Bengal and Legislative Assembly of Punjab would meet in two groups. I'm telling you once again, Legislative Assembly of Bengal and Legislative Assembly of Punjab. So these would meet in two groups. So firstly, all the Hindu of Legislative Assembly of Bengals and Punjab would meet. They would vote whether to go or not go for partition. Similarly, then all the Muslims of Legislative Assembly of Bengal and Punjab would meet in a single session, and they would vote whether to go for partition or not. If a simple majority achieved by either group, अगर एक group को भी simple majority मिल जाती, if a simple majority was achieved by either group, then partition would occur, right? If a simple majority achieved by either group went with partition, then these provinces would be partitioned. So that was the Mountbatten Plan, point number A. Independence of the princely states ruled out. Earlier, as we read in the Cabinet Mission Plan, that either the princely states could join India or they can form an independent agreement with the British government. But now independence of the princely states was ruled out. They now had to either join India or Pakistan. So accession of Hyderabad in Pakistan ruled out. So accession of Hyderabad in Pakistan was also ruled out according to the Mountbatten Plan. Now, on the basis of Mountbatten Plan, Congress committee made the proposal to approve partition. Proposal was presented by Govind Vallabh Pant. So the partition proposal from the Congress Working Committee also came along the lines of the Mountbatten Plan. So the partition proposal, it was presented by Govind Vallabh Pant. It was supported by Maulana, Nehru and Patel in Delhi on 14th of June 1947. Now, you should understand this chronology right from the very beginning, that Mountbatten came in 24th of March 1947 in India. Then he released his Mountbatten Plan, which was nothing but the partition plan, on June the 3rd, 1947. And then on 14th of June 1947, the Congress Working Committee also gave its partition approval in the form of a proposal which was presented by Govind Vallabh Pant, and it was supported by Maulana, Nehru and Patel in Delhi on 14th of June 1947. However, Dr. Kichlu termed the acceptance to partition as surrender of nationalism in favor of communalism. Now, this question might be very tricky, because then you have to remember this statement: surrender of nationalism in favor of communalism. This statement was made by Dr. Kichlu when Congress Working Committee released its partition proposal along the lines of Mountbatten Plan. I'm going to tell you once again, this partition proposal by the Congress Working Committee was presented by Govind Vallabh Pant, and it was supported by Nehru, Patel and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad on 14th of June 1947. Finally, according to the Mountbatten Plan, there was to be set up a partition council in which there are going to be members like Nehru, Patel and Menon, VP Menon. Okay, now based on the Dickey-Byrd Plan or the Mountbatten Plan, British government passed Indian Independence Act on 18th of July 1947. You can just remember the month July 1947. The Indian Independence Act was passed by the British government. The British sovereign appointed the last Governor General of Free India, but this did not mean that that the British sovereignty continued to exist in Free India. The British sovereign appointed the last Governor General of Free India. So even after this act was passed and India achieved independence, still the British sovereign appointed a last Governor General of Free India, which did not mean that the British sovereignty continued to exist in Free India. Okay, I think it was C. Rajagopalachari, the last Governor General of Free India. Now, a separate dominion of Pakistan, princely states, and India with a common central government was the Plan Balkan of Mountbatten. So this was the Plan B of Mountbatten, which never got materialized. It was basically a dominion of Pakistan, a dominion of princely states, and a dominion of India with a common central government. So this could be asked in one of very plainly that a separate dominion of Pakistan, princely states, and India, a separate dominion of Pakistan, princely states, and India with a common central government was the Plan Balkan of Mountbatten. Okay, so like I said, the Plan Balkan of Mountbatten was to make separate dominions of Pakistan, a dominion of princely states, and a dominion of India with a common central government. But this did not come to fruition. Subba Lakshmi in the Central Assembly at midnight of 15th of August sang Jana Gan Man and Sare Jahan Se Acha written by Iqbal. So Sare Jahan Se Acha was written by Iqbal, whereas we already know that Jana Gan Man was written by Rabindranath Tagore, but this was sung in the Central Assembly. Subba Lakshmi in the Central Assembly at midnight of 15th of August sang Jana Gan Man. So it was Subba Lakshmi. Mountbatten appointed the first Prime Minister of India as Nehru. Note that Mountbatten was the first Governor General of Free India, and first Indian Governor General of Free India was C. Rajagopalachari. While Mahatma Gandhi this statement is not correct. I think Ambedkar became Law Minister, which was recommended by Gandhi. I have not written this right correctly, but anyways, I'll check that. You can check it on Google. Who was the first Law Minister in Free India? So Mountbatten appointed the first Prime Minister of India as Nehru, and Mountbatten was the first Governor General of Free India. He stayed back even when India got independence, and like I said, that there was one more Governor General by the British sovereign government to be appointed, but that didn't mean that the British sovereignty would continue through that Governor General. So it was Governor General. First Indian Governor General of Free India was C. Rajagopalachari after Mountbatten left. Now Kripalani became the president of the INC Merit session of 1946. I already knew that. Now Panikkar was another person who had a view that most important achievement of British rule was the unification of entire Indian subcontinent, while Copland said that Indian nationalism was the child of the British rule. So Copland said that Indian nationalism was the child of the British rule, while Panikkar said that most important achievement of the British rule was that India में entire subcontinent का unification हो गया. So अपने अपने opinions हैं, ठीक है. Now coming to the Regulating Act of 1773, which appointed Governor General of Bengal with supervisory powers over other presidencies. So Governor General had a council of 4 who could vote but not veto. Also through this act, Provincial Assembly at Bihar was made. So Provincial Assembly at Bihar was made through the Regulating Act of 1773. Also, a Supreme Court at Fort William, Calcutta was formed with the first CJI as Eliza Imphe, with supreme judiciary over all British subjects. It started functioning in 1774. So it started functioning the next year. However, the rules made by the Governor General in Council were not to be registered with the Supreme Court. The rules made by the Governor General in Council were not to be registered with the Supreme Court. So somewhat there was a demarcation between the Governor General in Council and the Supreme Court. So a couple of things that I didn't know was that the Regulating Act of 1773 provided for a Governor General Council of 4 members who could vote but not veto. So none of the members had veto power. So this you should remember, that none of the members had veto power through this act. Governor General had a council of 4 to begin with in the Regulating Act of 1773. The other thing that I didn't know was that this act also ended up creating a Provincial Assembly at Bihar. बाकी तो मुझे याद है कि एक फोर्ट विलियम कैलकटा को सुप्रीम कोर्ट बना दिया और उसमें एलिजा इम्फे को चीफ जस्टिस बना दिया, और ये भी पता था कि द रूल्स मेड बाय गवर्नर जनरल इन काउंसिल वर नॉट टू बी रजिस्टर्ड विद द सुप्रीम कोर्ट. Now, in a bid to convince Cornwallis to make him accept the Governor Generalship, the post of Governor General, he was made both the Governor General and Commander-in-Chief. Also, he was given the veto over his council through the Act of Settlement 1786. This is the most important fact. Later in 1793, with the help of Barlow, he made the Cornwallis Code, which divested the collector of judicial and magisterial powers and left him only with the revenue department. So, divested the collector of judicial and magisterial powers and left him with only revenue department. A new class of officer district judge was created to preside over the district civil courts. Cornwallis was the first Governor General to establish regular police on British pattern, and IPC was drafted in 1860 on recommendation of the First Law Commission as per the Government of India Act 1833. So as per Government of India Act 1833 के तहत पहला लॉ कमीशन बना था, और पहले लॉ कमीशन ने क्या किया था? IPC was drafted in 1860 by the first law commission. Now the first law commission was brought or set up as per the Government of India Act 1833. तो ये इतना याद रखना है. So Cornwallis Code बनाया गया था बार्लो की मदद से. I think that was in 1793, and Cornwallis Code में यही था, which divested the collector of his magisterial as well as judicial powers. Now the collector only dealt with the revenue department, and for the judicial functions, a new class of officer called the district judge was created, who was the head of the district civil court, who used to preside over the district civil court. Now Cornwallis was the first Governor General to establish a regular police force on British pattern, and IPC was made in 1860 by the First Law Commission, which was constituted as per the Government of India Act 1833. Now, the monopoly of East India Company in trade with India was abolished in 1813. Monopoly of East India Company was abolished in 1813, but it retained its monopoly of trade in tea and country trade with China till 1833. The Act of 1833 was peak of centralization, as all the financial and administrative powers were centralized in the hands of Governor General in Council. At first, 4 members was appointed in the Council of Macaulay. Also, a committee under Macaulay was formed in 1854 to give effect to the scheme of appointment in civil services through competition. According to Macaulay, the company is an anomaly, but it is a part of a system where everything is an anomaly. So you should remember this statement. Who said that? It was said by Macaulay. And a committee under Macaulay was formed in 1854 to give effect to the scheme of appointment in civil services through competition. तो ये line important है. Then the Act of 1833 was the peak of centralization, as all the financial and administrative powers were centralized in the hands of Governor General in Council. ये भी एक pointer है. ठीक है, तो Macaulay के अंदर कमेटी बनाई जिसके तहत ये बनाना था, एक स्कीम और पॉलिसी बनानी थी जिसके तहत कि सिविल सर्विसेज में अपॉइंटमेंट किया जा सके कंपटीशन के थ्रू. So that committee was headed by Macaulay, and Macaulay said this famous statement, and this committee was formed in 1854 that I was just talking about. And तो जो फोर्थ मेंबर गवर्नर जनरल की काउंसिल में लाया गया था 1833 में, आई थिंक जो फोर्थ मेंबर ले आया गया था, that was Macaulay. And the monopoly of East India Company was abolished in 1813, but it retained its monopoly in tea trade and country trade with China. But 1833 तक आते आते सारी प्रकार की monopoly of East India Company was abolished. आगे बढ़ते हैं. So Montague-Chelmsford report recommended to increase the number of Indians in the administration, and also the examination shall be jointly held in Britain and India. And from 1922 ICS exam began to be held in India. तो पहले तो इंक्रीज़ ये ज़रूरत पड़ी कि टू इंक्रीज़ द नंबर ऑफ इंडियंस इन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, जिसके लिए फिर एग्जामिनेशन शैल बी जॉइंटली हेल्ड इन ब्रिटेन एंड इंडिया, जिसके तहत 1922 में ICS एग्ज़ाम बिगैन टू बी हेल्ड इन इंडिया. द एटचिसन कमीशन वाज हाउएवर अगेंस्ट द साइमल्टेनियस होल्डिंग ऑफ एग्जाम्स. 1922 ICS exam began to be held in India. In 1924, Lee Commission had recommended in its report for establishment of Independent and Impartial Public Service Commission in India, and on the basis of such recommendation UPSC was established in 1926. तो ली कमीशन ने एक इंडिपेंडेंट और इम्पार्शियल पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशन का गठन करने की मांग की थी, जिसके तहत UPSC was established in 1926. Separately, through the Government of Act Government of India Act 1935, PSCs were formed for both the state and the central services. However, in the Government of India Act 1935, it was called as Federal Public Service Commission. Post-independent, the name was changed to UPSC. So, separately through the Government of India Act 1935, public service commissions were formed for both state and central services. However, in the Government of India Act 1935, it was called FPSC. So, okay. So UPSC was established in 1926 separately through the Government of India Act 1935. PSCs were formed for both state and central services. However, in the Government of India Act 1935, it was called as FPSC. Okay. Now, the Montague-Chelmsford report also introduced diarchy. I think it was introduced in the provinces. Education, local self-government, public health and sanitation, cooperative societies, irrigation, waterways, famine relief were delegated to the provinces as transferred subjects. तो डायरकी के तहत transferred subjects और reserved subjects की बात होती है, हम जानते हैं कैसे होता है वो. While the important matters like justice, land revenue, land and police were reserved for the governor. So above this, Governor General had the final veto. तो ट्रांसफर्ड और रिजर्व सब्जेक्ट्स की मैंने बात बता दी. इरिगेशन, कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज़, इरिगेशन, वाटरवेज, famine relief were delegated to the provinces as transferred subjects. Important matters like justice, land, revenue, police were reserved for the governor of the provinces. तो डायरकी इन द प्रोविंसेस कब आई? मॉन्टेग-चेल्मसफोर्ड रिफॉर्म्स के अंतर्गत आई. मॉन्टेग-चेल्मसफोर्ड रिफॉर्म्स के अंतर्गत एक मांग रखी गई टू इंक्रीज द नंबर ऑफ इंडियंस इन द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, जिसके तहत ये डिसाइड हुआ कि अब से साइमल्टेनियस होल्डिंग ऑफ ICS एग्जामिनेशंस बोथ इन इंडिया एंड इंग्लैंड होगा. और ये 1922 में के आगे 1922 के उपरांत ये स्टार्ट भी कर दिया गया. हाउएवर एटचिसन कमीशन इसके खिलाफ थे और 1924 में ली कमीशन बनाया गया, जिसने ये मांग रखी थी एक इंडिपेंडेंट इम्पार्शियल कमीशन बनाया जाए फॉर पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशन बनाया जाए, जिसके तहत UPSC बनाया गया 1926 में. साथ ही साथ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 में सेंट्रल सर्विसेज ऑफ द स्टेट सर्विसेज एज वेल एज सेंट्रल सर्विसेज के लिए वेरियस पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशंस के भी बनाने की मांग की गई थी. However, in the Government of India Act 1935, these public service commissions were called as Federal Public Service Commission. साथ ही साथ ये Montague-Chelmsford reforms, they introduced hierarchy in the provinces, and the cooperative subjects like cooperative societies, irrigation, waterways, famine relief, local self-governments, public health and sanitation, and education. So these were delegated to the provinces as transferred subjects, whereas important matters like justice, land, revenue, police were reserved for the governor. So, and final veto was held by Governor General. Now, इसके बाद Indian Councils Act आया 1892 में. It gave the members the right to ask questions on budget or on matters of public interest, but none of them were given right to ask supplementary questions. This was applicable to members, while additional members could ask questions only on public interest with a prior notice of 6 days. So, एक हो गए members और एक हो गया additional members. तो ये जो मैंने बताया कि इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1892 के तहत राइट टू आस्क क्वेश्चंस ऑन बजट ऑन मैटर्स ऑफ पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट ये दे दिया गया था, बट सिर्फ मेंबर्स को दिया गया था, लेकिन एक कंडीशंस के साथ कि नन ऑफ देम वर गिवन द राइट टू आस्क सप्लीमेंट्री क्वेश्चंस. मतलब सप्लीमेंट्री क्वेश्चंस नहीं पूछ सकते थे. राइट मतलब आस्क क्वेश्चंस पूछ सकते थे बजट पे या फिर किसी और पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट मैटर पे, लेकिन सप्लीमेंट्री क्वेश्चंस नहीं पूछ सकते थे 1892 में. और जो एडिशनल मेंबर्स थे वो तो क्वेश्चंस भी सिर्फ पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट पे पूछ सकते थे, और वो भी 6 दिन के प्रायर नोटिस देने के बाद. ऑल्सो थ्रू दिस एक्ट सिस्टम ऑफ इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन स्टार्टेड. सो 1892 के काउंसिल एक्ट के तहत सिस्टम ऑफ इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन ऑल्सो स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम दिस 1892. ठीक है, याद रखना. Now, Bombay, Madras, Calcutta High Courts were established through the Indian High Court Act of 1861. Indian High Court Act of 1861, most short-lived constitutional reform was the Morley-Minto Act. As Ramsay MacDonald said, it's a short-term agreement between democracy and bureaucracy. I don't know for which reform did Ramsay MacDonald said that. इनका नाम हमने एक ही जगह पढ़ा है, communal award. तो आई थिंक उसी के लिए ये बोले होंगे इट्स अ शॉर्ट टर्म अग्रीमेंट बिटवीन डेमोक्रेसी एंड ब्यूरोक्रेसी. बट अदरवाइज देखा जाए तो मोस्ट शॉर्ट लिव्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल रिफॉर्म वाज द मॉडल एक्ट एंड इंडियन हाई कोर्ट एक्ट 1961 के तहत बॉम्बे, मद्रास और कैलकाटा जो 3 प्रेसिडेंसीज में कोर्ट्स थी वो उनका गठन हुआ था. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 को कुछ फ्रेजेस से डिफाइन किया जा सकता है, सच एज अ कार विच इज़ अ ब्रेक बट नो इंजन, चार्टर ऑफ स्लेवरी. ये दोनों ही फ्रेजेस नेहरू ने कहे थे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 के लिए. सो मोर इलेक्टेड इंडियन रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स इन द प्रोविंशियल असेंबलीज वाज वन ऑफ द फीचर. प्रोविजन ऑफ डायरेक्ट इलेक्शंस वर मेड. अभी मैंने कहा कि पहली बार इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन कब स्टार्ट हुआ, तो 1892 से स्टार्ट हुआ. बट डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन कब से स्टार्ट हुआ? सो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 से मेरे ख्याल से डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन स्टार्ट हुआ था. प्रोविजन ऑफ डायरेक्ट इलेक्शंस वर मेड. आई विल कंफर्म दैट कि पहले वो कौन सा एक्ट या एक्ट था जिसके तहत प्रोविजन ऑफ डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम गॉट स्टार्टेड. यू नीड टू कंफर्म दैट ऑन गूगल. एनीवेज, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 को नेहरू ने बोला कि अ कार विच इज़ अ ब्रेक बट नो इंजन, और चार्टर ऑफ स्लेवरी भी बोला. नाउ दिस एक्ट had a provision to include more Indian representatives in provincial assemblies. Provision of direct elections were made. Reorganization of the provinces. Establishment of a federal court. A federation of British provinces plus princely states was envisaged with princes nominated in the assemblies or councils. In spite of such provisions, princes refused to join the federations. The British government failed to overcome the opposition against the federalist scheme by Congress, Muslim League and the princes. So Government of India Act 1935 के तहत British government had envisaged a federation of British provinces, princely states, British provinces and princely states का फेडरेशन बनाने की कोशिश की गई थी ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा, लेकिन द ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट फेल्ड टू ओवरकम द ऑपोजिशन अगेंस्ट द फेडरल स्कीम बाय INC एंड मुस्लिम लीग एंड द प्रिंसेस. सभी ने इसका अपोजिशन किया. फाइनली फेडरल स्कीम वाज विदहेल्ड. द एक्ट कंटेन्ड इंस्ट्रूमेंटेशन ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शंस विच लेटर बिकेम द DPSP इन आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. नाउ दिस पॉइंट इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इंस्ट्रूमेंटेशन ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शंस, दैट्स नथिंग बट द DPSP ऑफ आवर करंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. तो ये भी हमें गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935 से मिलता है. ठीक है. अर्ली 19th century ब्रिटिश feared रशियन रेवोल्यूशन थ्रू खाइबर एंड बोलान पासेस. रशियन इन्वेजन का हमेशा डर बना रहता था 19th century के स्टार्टिंग में थ्रू खाइबर एज वेल एज बोलान पासेस. तो क्वेश्चन में बदल सकता है, इसको रशियन की जगह फ्रेंच कर सकता है और आपसे कहेगा ट्रू है या फॉल्स है, तो फॉल्स हो जाएगा. एक्चुअली रशियन इन्वेजन का खतरा हमेशा लगता था ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट को थ्रू दीज खाइबर एंड बोलान passes. Now Farooq Siyar reimposed jizya, I know that, and during Third Carnatic Wars, British reoccupied Rajmundry and Masulipatam under Francis Ford. Malcolm was an American priest visiting India in 1830, giving accounts of slavery. In Indian context, concept of paternalism in governance is associated with triple M. So this is just a trick that you should remember. Concept of paternalism in governance. You can see that in triple M. This triple M is just a mnemonic or a trick to remember. Malcolm, Munro, and Metcalfe. Although there is one more, but you can skip that. And there is another thing that Malcolm, and there is another person called Malcolm, who was an American priest visiting India in 1830, giving accounts of slavery. So he was an American priest in 1830. Now Farooq Siyar reimposed jizya. I know that. British reoccupied Third Carnatic Wars. Now you can skip that. So Sea of Calamity 1866 में उड़ीसा फेमाइन आई थी जिसको Sea of Calamity का उपाधि दिया गया. Not उपाधि, it's like a notorious word. Sea of Calamity. The Great Famine of 1876, एक और फेमाइन हुई थी 1876 में, और उस फेमाइन की वजह से फाइनली फिर स्ट्राचे कमीशन बनाया गया था 1880 में, which passed the Famine Code 1883. अब ये कुछ ट्रीटी ऑफ सालबाई 1875 जो पहला एंग्लो मराठा वॉर हुआ था, जो पेशवा और ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट के बीच हुआ था, मेंटेनिंग 20 years of peace and enabling British government to exert pressure on Mysore with the help of Marathas in recovering their territories. और फाइनली बंगाल में फेमाइन कब आई थी? 1943 में. तो मैंने इस पैराग्राफ में काफ़ी डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स के चीज़ें पता चली, लेकिन फेमाइन एक कॉमन टॉपिक था, तो मैं फिर से समराइज़ कर दे रहा हूँ. सी ऑफ कैलेमिटी 1866 वाले उड़ीसा फेमाइन को बोलते हैं. उसके बाद 10 साल बाद 1876 में भी फिर फेमाइन आती है. अब कहाँ आती है वो मुझे देखना पड़ेगा, बट the famine of 1876 actually caused the Strachey Commission to be formed, जिसने 1883 में famine कोड रिलीज़ किया. 1875 उसी के आसपास एंग्लो मराठा वॉर भी हुई थी फर्स्ट, जिसमें ट्रीटी ऑफ सालबाई साइन की गई थी ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट और मराठास के पेशवा के द्वारा. उसमें यही लिखा था कि टू मेंटेन 20 years of peace एंड कलेक्टिवली फाइट अगेंस्ट द मैसूर. फिर फाइनली 1943 में जो फेमाइन आई थी वो बंगाल में आई थी. अब थर्ड एंग्लो मैसूर वॉर 1790 से 1792 के बीच हुई थी. इसमें विलियम मीडोज़ ने हराया था टीपू सुल्तान को. विलियम मीडोज़ डिफीटेड टीपू एंड इसमें ट्रीटी ऑफ श्रीरंगापट्टनम हुई थी. 3 crores वर्थ ऑफ वॉर इंडेमनिटी चार्ज की गई थी टीपू सुल्तान में. देयर वर टोटल 3 एंग्लो बर्मीज़ वॉर्स. द फर्स्ट इन 1824 ट्रीटी यांडाबू असम. तो जो पहली एंग्लो बर्मा वॉर हुई थी उसमें ट्रीटी ऑफ यांडाबू हम लोग याद रखते हैं. बाकी 2 का तो ट्रीटी नहीं पता है, पूछा भी नहीं गया है. बट इन टोटल देयर वर 3 एंग्लो बर्मीज़ वॉर. अब ये कुछ रीजन्स हैं जो ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट को मिल गए थे आफ्टर साइनिंग द ट्रीटी ऑफ यांडाबू. सो कचहर है, मणिपुर है, तेनासरिम है, अराकन है, जैनेतिया, अराकन, तेनासरिम, कचहर, मणिपुर, ये सब ट्रीटी ऑफ यांडाबू के तहत ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट को मिल गई थी आफ्टर फाइटिंग द एंग्लो बर्मीज़ वॉर. एक चीज़ ये मैं बताना भूल गया, थर्ड एंग्लो मैसूर वॉर वॉज फॉट बिटवीन ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट एंड द मैसूर किंगडम अंडर टीपू सुल्तान. उसमें विलियम मीडोज़ ने टीपू सुल्तान को हरा दिया था इन 1790 to 1792, जिसके तहत ट्रीटी ऑफ श्रीरंगापट्टनम हुई थी, जिसके तहत 3 करोड़ वॉर इंडेमनिटी चार्ज की गई थी मैसूर किंगडम से. नाउ ड्रामेटिक परफॉर्मेंस एक्ट 1876 एंड वर्नाकुलर प्रेस एक्ट 1878 टू कर्टेल इंडियन प्रेस. बंगाल टेनेंसी एक्ट 1885 एंड ये मैं पढ़ चुका हूँ. नॉर्थ वेस्ट फ्रंटियर प्रोविंस एंड अवध एक्ट 1890. ये बस आपको टाइमलाइन का याद दिलाने का वो हो रहा है. ऑल ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछना ही नहीं चाहिए ये जिसमें ईयर पूछा जाता है, बट करना पड़ेगा. सो क्रोनोलॉजिकली अगर देखा जाए तो असेंडिंग ऑर्डर में ड्रामेटिक परफॉर्मेंस एक्ट 1876, वर्नाकुलर प्रेस एक्ट 1878, बंगाल टेनेंसी एक्ट 1885, नॉर्थ वेस्ट फ्रंटियर प्रोविंस एंड अवध एक्ट 1890. तो ईश्वर चंद्र को दया सागर भी बोलते हैं, दया सागर. MG रनाडे सोशल कॉन्फ्रेंस बनाए थे और पूना सार्वजनिक सभा भी यही बनाए थे, MG रनाडे. सो MG रनाडे को 2 ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से हमेशा याद रखना है, एक सोशल कॉन्फ्रेंस से और एक पूना सार्वजनिक सभा से. ठीक है. लॉर्ड हेस्टिंग्स टुक स्टेप्स अगेंस्ट द पिंडारीज. और कब लिया था लॉर्ड हेस्टिंग्स ने स्टेप्स अगेंस्ट पिंडारीज? February 18, 1818. ये पिंडारीज का जो मसला हुआ था वो लास्ट जो मेरे ख्याल से थर्ड एंग्लो मराठा वॉर हुई थी उसमें हुआ था. Karim Khan was one of the leaders of the Pindaris who surrendered to the British and was given the estate in Gavashpur. ठीक है. अब अगला हम 48 पेज नंबर से अगले वीडियो में देखते हैं.